what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. Yar-har, fiddle-dee-dee. Being a pirate is a right thing. Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. You are a pirate. We got us a map to lead us to...
Welcome, lads and lassies, to the Pirate Show. I mean, the General Gaming Show. I'll be Bridger. I'll be bringing you all the good stuff today about piracy. And these be me mates. Welcome, mates. How goes it?
Do I have to do a pirate voice?
No, you don't have to do a pirate voice. Welcome, everybody, to the General Gaming Show. General Gaming, ready for duty. I don't know why I have to do that. I feel compelled every single time. Welcome. We've got Great back on the show with us. Good to see you again, Great.
Hey, what's going on?
And we've got a brand new host to the show here, but a longtime friend of mine. Some of you may remember, Rogers. Welcome, sir.
Beer, hello. Oh my God.
Is it beer o'clock already?
Yeah, it's early enough.
Okay, so we've got a big show for you guys today. We're going to start by talking about, some various games that we've been playing recently. There's a couple of things maybe in the news segment. Then I am going to blatantly steal from another podcast and and take over their meta moment. More on that later. And then we'll be talking about piracy. Now, there's a lot of interesting things flowing around about piracy, and we are going to try to cover it from every angle as much as possible in as few funky voices as possible, but I can't guarantee anything. Anyway, let's start by what we're playing recently. Rogers, what have you been playing recently?
Oh, well, recently I've been playing Tomb Raider, and Bridger, I know you and I disagree.
Don't get me started.
With our opinions on the game, but I am enjoying it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a well put together game. I like playing it. I just picked it up again after not playing it for a long time and having fun with that. Some Killing Floor. Killing Floor is always a staple of my gaming year. It's a lot of fun. It's a great game. It's good for years and years and years of entertainment, and Company Heroes 2, of course. So, just playing the staples.
I only have one thing to say about Tomb Raider. The actual game itself, the running and the jumping and the puzzle solving is enjoyable. It's pretty fun. I think what makes the game, what sells it, what makes it amazing and enjoyable is the world that they've crafted. It's mysterious. You want to know what's going on, and they've given these characters some really good life. They feel like, real characters. They obviously look amazing. The hair physics are crazy. But
the hair physics.
and the voice acting is great, but then they go and make so many stupid things that jar me out of the immersion. I can't suspend my disbelief when you shove me into 3 separate pits filled with fresh body parts of what must be at least 30 people in a span of days. How many people crash on this island in a day? And people don't even notice, like, hey, that plane that we sent to go look for the other people went down too. Let's just send another one. Well, that one didn't come back. Guess we'll just write it off.
Well, hey, I mean, it's like the Bermuda Triangle,
It's like the Lost Island or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like that whole phenomena. What I think is a little bit... I mean, obviously, I guess they have to do it for gameplay purposes, is how many people you kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, initially it's super realistic. She has a hard time killing people, right? And it's really emotional. It's really intense.
She has, one emotional reaction from having to kill somebody. And then after that, it's like, okay, I got this.
The gloves are off. Let's go.
No, but I mean, they do that they obviously have to capture, other markets, essentially. But, I mean, the shooting, I think the gameplay is all solid. I think especially, we're saying, the movement, everything, it's very Assassin's Creed, very fluent. It works very well. The combat, even itself, is solid. It's good. It's entertaining. So, I mean, that to me, makes up for the realm of believability being thrown out the window. It's just a game.
I just had to stop because she's also had 3 concussions and 4 drops from 4-story windows, essentially.
With pointy
the equivalent.
Landing on pointy.
And been stabbed and probably infected at least 6 times by rusty metal.
Well, she had her tetanus booster?
Well, that explains everything.
I'm going to go with that because, yeah.
All right, so, great. What have you been playing recently?
Recently I've been kicking around some Crusader Kings 2, which is pretty fun to just like jump in and be a king and like kill everyone in your family to make sure you're king forever.
Now,
I don't know.
Crusader
like,
Kings 2. So what is the goal of that game? Because I've heard a lot about it. It's like from this Paradox, right? The Universalis people? Europa Universalis?
It falls under what's kind of labeled the grand strategy genre of games, and it's sort of based more historically, and they try to create systems of games in the game that replicate like realism in life, but not perfect realism. Of course, it has to be a game and it has to be fun at some level. And what Crusader Kings do is it focus on the Crusader Kings, so from like the 1000s till about 1300, before sort of the Renaissance era, and you're playing a medieval ruler effectively, and it's basically court intrigue and war and diplomacy and managing a dynasty. So your goal in that game is really you're running this dynasty and you're trying to build this dynasty into like some great power, but it's really open-ended and it's a big sandbox, so you can kind of do what you want in it using like the systems, and if you want to kill everyone,
is there like a victory condition, like you need to do this by this date?
No, there is no victory condition, but there's an end date. So
that would just drive me nuts. Like I want to play a game, and games by definition have to have a victory condition. I just can't stand sandboxes. I don't know. Maybe I got stung by a bee one too many times in the sandbox when I was playing as a kid, but I don't like them.
Well, I would say the best part of Crusader Kings 2, at least, is just the sort of anecdotal way it just forms these like stories. So like you're playing around and all these like crazy events start happening and these things like build up, and you sort of create this like personal narrative for your dynasty that you're playing through. And yeah, the start date comes and you just get like a random score, and the score really means nothing. It's like the points in whose line it is anyway. It really doesn't matter. But it's all about like sort of that experience you go through, and your eldest son dies out in the war, and you have this crazy succession crisis in your realm, and like that's what it's about. It's not about winning in the end. But games that I have been playing that are about winning, Counter-Strike Go, yeah. Global Offensive, is that the actual
Global Offensive, yeah. I've actually been playing some of that today. I do enjoy it. I bought it a long time ago, and I just don't play it enough. It's one of those games where I'd like to play it with somebody.
Yeah, I only play that game with other people. Like I'm not solo queue guy. I can't go in there and be like, yeah, I'm gonna play some Clash, competitive, and I'm gonna knock out no, I'm not that good at that game, so I have to play with other people to carry me pretty hard.
It's a fun game though. It's really good. The improvements they made off Source were solid.
Absolutely. It definitely feels a lot. I mean, every time I play that game, I get the same feeling like when I used to play it was Beta 4 when I started playing it. That's how you show your gamer cred. Well, I started playing Counter-Strike at Beta 4. Alright, so what I've been playing is a little bit of MechWarrior Online and Hawken. I came back to them because I've had the ability to play them for several months now. And they both have improved pretty significantly over the last couple of months when I hadn't played them. But I have to say I'm still very disappointed by MechWarrior Online. Maybe it's just not a game for me, but it felt like a lot of the times I didn't have a whole lot of agency over what was going on. And I think that's because it's designed to be a super team game. Like, even though League is a team game and you have to work with your team to win, in League, your own personal performance can still determine whether you win or lose. And you can know, where you should be. Your positioning is very important. But it felt like in MechWarrior, if I didn't know exactly what I was doing, I would ever get into a situation where if I couldn't win the fight, I would just have no ability to just die. Like, okay, I'm here, he's there, I can't run away, he can't run away, because turning your back to the enemy is never a good idea. So we're both just going to slam at each other until one of us wins. And so it's basically, now it's all about all of the decisions that we made before we went into the game. And that always has bugged me. It's bugged me when I played Magic the Gathering, and it bugs me when I play MechWarrior Online. That's just me, though. I don't know. Have you guys played either of these?
I've fooled around with Hawken. And
Hawken's more to my style, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt like more like a FPS than it did a mech game. Mech games are usually clunky and slow, but Hawken kind of has a very fast pace to it, and it's more about like sort of those death matches and stuff like that, and like those skirmishes that you have with people.
Yeah, and I I felt like I had more agency in Hawken, but maybe it's just because I'm more used to it, so I was able to pick it up easier. I couldn't tell you for sure. But,
well, you're traditionally an FPS player, right?
Yes. I
think that makes a lot of sense.
So maybe I just felt more at home, and maybe if I just played MechWarrior more... But like I said, I think it plays best when you have a team of at least 4 people, like a lance of MechWarrior, so that you can say, okay, you're going to play a light so you can get spots for the... Because I was trying to play sort of an artillery class character with long-range missiles, and that doesn't work if the enemy has ECM and your team doesn't have anything to jam it. I'm sitting there going, I got no targets, guys! Have fun, I'll just sit up here, because if I go in, I die. Anyway. So, I had some fun with those. Free-to-play, and they still bug me with their free-to-play frustration bullshit. Like, when I was playing MechWarrior, I died, right, about, 3-4 minutes into the match, and I was like, alright, I want to go play another game. And you don't respawn. So if I leave the game after I've died, there's literally no ramifications from my teammates. I can't help them. I'm already dead. But when I left the game and tried to queue up again, it's like, nope, your mech is still in the game. What do you mean my mech is still in the game?
What?
Why can't I go again? And somebody told me they think it's because they want you to buy more mech slots so that you can have, go into... But I wanted to play in that mech. I'm only good at one. I don't understand what the point of that is. Unless... I don't think there's any premium ability you can... that'll prevent you from having to go through that. Anyway. So that's what I've been up to. I've also been playing Artemis. Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator. Have you guys ever tried that?
Never heard of it.
This is a game that is designed to replicate the feeling of, like, being on the Star Trek Enterprise on the bridge. You have...
Oh, really?
You install
Is it like FTL or what?
Yes-ish, but you get everybody in a room in, like, a LAN party, and you install it on 6 different computers, and one computer is the main server, and you connect that to your plasma TV or your projector, and that projects the main screen. And then you've also got things like the weapons station, you got the helm station, you got the engineering station, you got the science station, which is like sensors, and then you've got the communications. And then a different player sits at every one of those stations, and the captain sits in a chair behind everybody and tries to coordinate everything that's going on. And the game will throw like bad guys at you, and you have to defend the deep space stations from attacks. And you have to work together with everybody in your crew. Like, the science person can tell you where the cloaked enemies are so that, you can correctly manipulate your ship, be in the right place, and, then the communications person can tell you what stations have produced nukes for you to go pick up, and then you can use those nukes in combat. And it's a lot of fun, especially if you have a touch screen, I have to say. Because when you're playing on the engineering station and the captain's like, we need more weapons, and I'm like, okay, and I just drag my finger up the weapons power till it's at 300%, and I watch the heat start rising, and I'm like, I'm dropping the coolant everywhere else. I'm sending it all to weapons, but it's still going up, Captain. We're going to have to drop it down to 200%. He's like, no, damn it, we need 300. It's an awesome experience. It's still, it's like $42, and then you can install it on 7 computers. Or 6 computers. So, if you look at it like that, you can get a bunch of friends together and say, hey, everybody pony up $6 or $7 and we can play this game. It was a fun afternoon. You can also play it on Android and iPhone tablets, by the way. So if you have like an iPad or a Nexus 7 or something like that, it'll play pretty well on those as well. Use one of those as a different station. So, that was a lot of fun.
So it's like that Space Cadet board game you were telling us.
It's a lot like that, but it's designed to be, a space sim that played with a computer. Now, he is supposedly releasing a second, like, Artemis version 2 sometime soon. He's got plans for it, because the big downfall of this game is the AI is not smart. We wound up winning a mission that was super difficult by just watching the enemy units, like, fly past a black hole and get sucked in, like, over and over again. There's like a whole squadron of them.
Nice.
We're talking about Artemis, but I'm showing Hawken because I don't have any footage of Artemis. It was at a friend's house and I didn't have the ability to record it. So, anyway, Artemis was pretty fun, but if the AI was smart, because after a while we got into sort of a pattern where it wasn't really difficult anymore, and you can ramp up the challenge, and you can fly different ships. Like we flew a missile cruiser, and then we flew a regular one, and then we flew a battleship which had giant lasers and lasers that could shoot out the back. So it's a good fun for an afternoon. I wouldn't want to play it for more than that, though. All right, let's go on to the news segment here. Rogers, COH2 has some new stuff to announce, right?
Yeah, basically recently, as of last week-ish, we received a new 1v1 map from the old Company Heroes, which is a fan favorite. Longra was brought into COH2 for free. So basically, if you own COH2 and you patch the game, which has to happen in Steam, you get a new map, and there are a whole bunch of nice balance changes that they introduced as well. So all solid stuff.
Rogers, I gotta do it. I gotta break the NDA. I gotta tell anybody that when we were at Relic HQ, we played Langris. I've gotta get it out in the open. I tried to hold it in for as long as I could, but now the world knows Langris is... Oh, it's already out? Okay.
Yeah, Ami beat you to it. He talked about it on Sunday Night Fights. So you fail, you fail.
Damn. Okay.
But yeah, it looks great in COH2, and a lot of people are really having fun with it now that we have pretty much a dedicated 1v1 for auto match. So it's really it's a great map to have in Company Heroes 2. It's a lot of fun. So very nice little update and snippet of news there. I can throw the announcement link in the show notes too.
Awesome.
So
awesome. And I know they're planning to do a lot of support for that too. So
yeah.
We'll see what other new stuff comes out. All right. So
absolutely.
Great. You and I are both very excited about this. T for teen. Yeah, that's it. We're excited about teens.
It's a good game. I love it.
Hey! I haven't watched this yet,
It's a
but
Sonic
I'm
game.
excited too.
It's Sonic.
Every man, woman, and child, many years ago.
Enough! Saguntum is lost, and our Western allies have failed us. Where was the last report of his whereabouts?
My spies in Iberia tell me his fleet has sailed. We must expect an invasion at Massalia!
You know, I've played so many Total War games, and I've played so much of Hannibal versus,
Rome.
No, it's called Rome, or it's called Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. It's a board game. I know exactly where Saguntum is.
That's good. You're ready.
And then he said Iberia, and I'm like, I know where that is. That's in Spain. I was like, wow, I'm awesome at this. History. So
All I have to say is thank God for technology.
yeah, look at this. This looks amazing.
And you know what? They've come out and they've said that the specs, they've actually officially released the requirements, but it's not much more than Shogun 2 in
Really?
the end. So yeah, a game that came out like 3 years ago is going to run as well as this is. They've
Wow.
definitely done a lot of great work on the engine. And a small fact, I know a lot of people had trouble with the really long load times in Shogun 2.
Oh yeah.
Apparently that was because the game would load the campaign engine and then it would load the battle engine, and it would have to like open up the engine and close it and then open up the other one and close it. In this game it's all on one engine, so the load times are significantly reduced, which is great.
Oh, here's my favorite part.
Mercenaries in the north report that he has forged an alliance with the tribes of the Po Valley. He intends to circumnavigate Massalia and march his army...
Over the Alps, perhaps! He would lose half his army from attrition alone. The other half would desert.
We must defend the mountain passes!
Do you expect the Gauls to welcome him when he arrives? I suppose he will bring with him an army of elephants!
Senator, I dare say that would be quite a feat, even for the great Hannibal Barca.
That is a really fucking awesome trailer. Whoever had the idea for that, I don't even understand. It's brilliant, right? I mean, you're using everybody knows about Hannibal crossing the Alps, everybody knows, but then you start with this argument and people are like, what's going on? What is this thing? And, you know, it's exactly like the Republic of Rome. I just love it. And then I saw the end, I was like, September 3rd? Yeah, I've been waiting. Yeah, everything said October up until now. I was like, that's a month! So, needless to say, that'll bring us right into the meta moment. On September 3rd, I will be streaming Rome 2. Absolutely. I might have to work, at least in the morning. Ugh. But I will be streaming in the evening afternoon. Also, other things in the meta moment, the General Gaming Show is now on a weekly schedule. That's right, we'll be doing it every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time. But tonight's obviously not a Sunday. That's because yesterday was Sunday. So we'll start next Sunday.
You can just blame me.
Yeah. This Wednesday, I'm going to be streaming, like every Wednesday, around 7 Eastern Daylight Time. It's going to be Kingdoms of Amalur this week, I think. That's a very fun, very pretty game to watch, I think. I got back into that game, and I realized how awesome looking the animations are, and it's just like, it's totally beautiful. So, anyway.
The combat is so fluid.
The combat is amazing, too. Hopefully the story doesn't put me to sleep again. Anyway, on the 31st of August 31st, Flavor of the Month, a brand new show concept idea that I've been throwing around in my head. Team Legacy is going to be putting together a tournament for a game called Puzzle Strike. So those of you who play board games, or maybe just follow David Serlin, the game designer, may know of Puzzle Strike. It is a board game based on a puzzle game, which itself is based on a fighting game, and it's a card game that's played with chips instead of cards.
Oh my god, my head.
I know, it's designed to do that to your head, but it's really a brilliant game. It's easy to pick up. It's way easier than I just made it sound. That was on purpose. But, troll face. Anyway, Puzzle Strike Tournament. I'm going to be putting together a video on how to play. It's there's an interface. You can actually go to fantasystrike.com right now and play it. It's free to play. You may be limited to only choosing certain characters, just like League only lets you play certain characters each week, and then they switch it around. If you'd like to buy, then you can play, certain characters all the time. But it's free to play if you just don't care. And when you're starting out, you don't care anyway, and it'll let you try out the different characters. So definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. fantasystrike.com, and we will be having a tournament for that on the 31st, and we will have some prizes. It's going to be a good time. Now, let's get into the feature story here, shall we? Piracy. Wow. That is a big topic. And I'm going to start by reading a quote from one of these articles that I have on here from Gama Sutra. Quote, "Over the years, I've realized that there are things called polarized topics. As soon as you hit one of these, thinking stops. Instead, as with the case of piracy, you get this spew of rote arguments. The word piracy becomes a trigger to regurgitate. There is a 99% chance this will happen with this article, so stop and think a little," unquote. I kind of thought about that, and I'm like, he's exactly right. There are many different polarized topics, whether it's piracy or any of these hot-button political issues, that will stop people from actually listening to their opponents and instead just start them regurgitating things they've already heard and decided to agree with. So let's try and today keep an open mind and talk about things from every angle and not just immediately go to, well, I already believe this, and just go with ideological stuff. So, let's talk about it. Guys, Rogers,
Yep.
Is it ever okay to pirate a game? Is there ever like a morally, ethically okay time to do it?
In my opinion, yes. I believe that especially in this gaming market that is, especially, let's take the FPS genre as a clear and cut example. With the Call of Duty bullshit, every frickin' new year, you get the same game again for $65, right? Same game, different weapons, different skins, different map, blah, 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 if there's even that much variation. So I really think in a gaming age now where demos are going bye-bye and they're charging people for betas. Betas are the new demo that they figured they could charge for the pre-orders and whatnot. That's happening with more and more games. I really think that it comes back to the slippery slope where it's okay to pirate, try out a game to essentially get the demo from it, or just play the game, see if you like it, and then it comes back to the slippery slope of if they're willing to buy it if they like it after. That's my crux of the argument, and really it's really difficult to try and figure out how often that's happening, how many pirates do buy the media that they enjoy after they test it, and how many don't.
Why do you think demos are going away?
Because more and more studios are releasing crap and charging full price for it.
That's not the case. The reason why demos are going away is because demos are so hard to make, especially in this day and age, with the production that games need to have, like the production value that games need to have. Back in the day, you could release like the single level of like Pharaoh or something, and people would go to town on it. But now, when you want to release the like single map of, say, Company of Heroes 2 before, or like a beta version, that is a lot of work that the team would have to put in to polish it, because everyone's going to be looking with that under a microscope and a magnifying glass.
And you can't just rip it out of the main piece, because then somebody who buys the game can just send you the missing pieces, right? At that point, that makes a new piracy thing. I think those are both possible reasons why the demo is disappearing, but one of the reasons that I saw on Extra Credits, by the way, which is a really good show if you haven't checked it out, they talked about how, well, you've got a couple of different outcomes, and so you draw a little box. And so you imagine there are two possibilities. Your game is really good, or your game is not really good. And then there are two different possibilities. You either have a demo, or you don't have a demo. So if your game is really good, and you have a demo, it will make people probably want to buy it. Best case. If your game is really good and you don't have a demo, it's probably still going to spread through word of mouth and reviews. If your game is bad and you have a demo, then you're going to lose customers.
You're committing suicide, yeah.
And if your game is really bad and you don't have a demo, well, then you still might get some people, buying your game. There's really no loss there. So if you have a demo and your game is good, the worst thing that could happen is people play your game and enjoy the demo, but then decide they don't need to buy it because they've already played your demo. And if your game is really, really good so that people have to buy it, it's going to spread via word of mouth anyway. So really, a demo can only hurt your sales from a business point of view, which is weird and backwards from a consumer. You're like, no, I want demos. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, but it really doesn't make sense for them to ever do that, does it? Oh, that just hurts my head. I don't like it.
The demo's kind of being replaced, I personally feel, by like events and stuff like that. So like not only the rise of like entertainment YouTube personalities that are going to all these weird events now and getting hands-on with stuff, but also, PAX is 4 days this year. That's an extra day of time that people are going to have to play, all these games that are going to be coming out this fall. Like, this is going to be a pretty interesting season with the new consoles coming out. So I think that space is kind of getting pushed aside, like the demos are getting pushed aside by these like sort of new ways to let people see the game, but not necessarily play it themselves 100%.
That's true. Yeah, because if you watch like a WTF is from Total Biscuit, you get probably a as good, if not a better idea of how good the game is than if you played a demo yourself.
Yeah.
But you also don't get to say, well, I spent 5 hours playing the demo, I probably don't have to buy it. You only get that 45 minutes, so you get a good slice of the whole thing. That's a good point. That's a pretty decent, that's a better way for people to show off their good games, is say, give it to Total Biscuit or give it to any of these personalities like Day 9 and have him play. Okay to pirate a game maybe if you have full intent to purchase, you're just not sure if it's a game that you think you'd want to buy, is what you said, Rogers. Do you agree to that, Great?
Not really. I come from the camp of like, the market is so tight now for games being made that tons of studios are closing left and right, and you gotta buy the games that you really want to play. You can't just go out and just pirate them all the time. I know people that do that all the time, and these studios need that money. And yeah, all that money's not going to go to developers who are trying really hard to make cool games. Like, no one sets out to make a bad game. But it's so tight right now, this market, that like those half a million copies that people aren't selling are legitimately hurting people so much, and people are getting out of jobs for that. And that hurts. It hurts on all levels. Even indie developers suffer hugely from piracy because they don't have the same sort of robust infrastructure as AAA developers to combat it as well, and so they get a lot of pirated games.
Well, do you think people are more or less willing to pirate those little indie games than like the big AAA titles?
I think it depends. Some people don't want to spend $15, even though $15 isn't a lot of money. Yeah. I think what it comes down to, and we're probably going to talk about this later, is like, why do people pirate? And I think it's it comes down to sort of that discussion more than like just price in a lot of ways.
Okay. So a lot of people have used the excuse, well, I was going to buy it, but it's got this horrible draconian DRM. Ubisoft, we're looking at you.
Yeah. Let's lie about it too. That works out pretty well.
Then lie about it. And I don't want to support that, so I'm going to vote with my wallet and pirate instead.
Or just don't play the game.
That's,
like you do that. I've done that plenty of times where I don't agree with some practices that a publisher's doing or a developer's even doing, and I just won't buy it. And it sucks and it's hard to do, but you gotta be a smart consumer sometimes, and you gotta make these decisions. You know, your decision. Yeah. How do you phrase that? Your mouth is where your money is, or something like that.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like where you spend your money.
Mouse and Shiraz on the YouTube comment, he says that demos might not increase sales directly, but may increase sales indirectly by dissuading piracy. It's easier to download a legit demo and decide if you like the game enough to buy it, and you're artificially limited there. You can't decide, I'll just try it out on this pirated copy and then buy it after and go, whoops, I've played through half of it already, might as well just keep going. You know, it's too easy psychologically to just trick yourself into thinking you're going to do the honorable thing and then not do it. I think he might have a point there. So, what about if a game is crowdfunded? You know, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things going on with crowdfunding of games these days. Star Citizen is an interesting, point. Unfortunately, now that I think about it, I was going to come up with some interesting ideas like, does this make people pirate? But so many of those games are games that can't be pirated because they're online only. So maybe that's not really a good answer. So let's talk about what does make people pirate. Is it because they don't have the money, or they just don't want to spend it, or what is it? I mean, raise your hand if you haven't pirated anything ever. Yeah, chat room's not even raising their hands. So, what makes people pirate stuff? People, hypothetical people. We're not talking about us.
I don't know. I mean, it's there are times when you see a game title, you know what it's going to be. Essentially, it's going to be the same thing with, I don't know, maybe a conclusion of a storyline or something like that. We'll use the Call of Duty series again as an example. And I'm not going to give them $65 to play the same game with a little bit of a different outcome or slightly different story or whatever. I'm not going to, I already bought the previous game. I've always supported the series. I'm not going to do it again. But I wouldn't mind checking it out. So
you're saying that's a pricing issue. They're releasing
it's
a game
not a pricing
that you
issue.
don't
It's
think...
more about principle of not putting enough time into a game. I mean, I honestly am from the camp of Valve and Blizzard and people who put decades into a game development as opposed to releasing a new damn game every year. Because to me, that's laziness. To me, never changing a graphics engine is laziness. And that's just my own personal opinion.
Well, I think that's console-itis more than anything else.
Well, that too. That certainly doesn't help either. But that's my own take on it. But I mean, also you can use Game of Thrones as an example. A lot of people love the show, and before HBO Go came out, there was no way other than waiting or buying an HBO subscription or waiting until the box set came out to watch the show. There was no infrastructure. They wouldn't allow the episodes individually on Amazon or any other downloadable service. They had to keep it in-house, and people just went elsewhere. They were like, okay, you don't want my money. I'm willing to pay individually for an episode, and you are not giving me any legitimate means of doing that, so fine. I'm going to circumvent that entire thing, and I'm going to get this episode, and I'm going to watch it, and then I'll probably buy it when it comes out, or if there's a legitimate way. I mean, there's an article that I'll put in show notes about HBO not minding the piracy of Game of Thrones, because they know it's the highest-selling box set in history or whatever, and it sells really well, and it does them really well, especially since HBO Go came out.
So what they're saying is, yes, it's got an extreme rate of piracy. That's because it's extremely popular. So if you have that many people that like something and X% are going to pirate, that means that percent is going to be flat-wise much larger than a less popular title. Now here's an interesting article that kind of jives in with what you're talking about. This one was entitled "Piracy Collapses as Legal Alternatives Do Their Job." Now this wasn't talking about games specifically, but it was talking about, I believe this is in Norway, and this is talking about music, movies, and TV piracy. And for a long time, they didn't have legal alternatives to get, these items like what you're talking about. They like, it was difficult or impossible to get TV shows and movies and music. But as these services became available, things like Spotify and other things like that became available in Norway that get songs that they wanted to get. Look at what happened. The piracy collapsed when it came to music, and TV shot down like in half over the course of the same time period. So I think that definitely goes to show that there are a lot of people pirating things just because they can't get it. Another perfect example is, I don't know, Great, did you read this thing about the Ouya, competing with Nintendo's own, re-releases because they have a better service of emulation and using pirated ROMs? Let me pull it up here. By the way, I've got all the links to these in the show notes if you guys want to check out the articles that we based this on. This one is from the Penny Arcade report, and it says, Nintendo isn't losing to the Ouya's high-quality emulation of classics games, it's losing to itself. So the Ouya is a perfect platform for emulators. So people can install emulators and then pirate the ROMs of old classic Nintendo games, and it's easier and faster and better of an experience on the Ouya than getting the same kind of classic Nintendo experiences on like the Wii U off of their store, which is stupid.
It is, and like this is circling back because I think we're kind of highlighting the same point here. Is this is definitely a service issue at the end of the day. Like, it is people not having availability to certain things, or that it's a better service on other platforms. Some games run better on people's PCs than they do on the actual consoles that they're made for. Some things are just not available where you are, and you have no other alternative. And I'd like to consider that in video game respects, sort of like the Gabe Newell family of thought. Is there's this interview with him where they ask him about the question comes up about piracy, and he comes out very clearly and states piracy is almost always a service problem and not a pricing problem. Mm-hmm. And that shows like Valve comes from the standpoint where Steam is sort of this like very, very it's DRM in a lot of ways, but it's also very unobtrusive. They make it very rewarding for the people that use it, and they make it a great service. And I think that is so core to a lot of the piracy problems, and not just in video games, but just in everything, like books and music and videos. And it shows because you showed that Norwegian that study, mm-hmm. and the evidence is there. Like, it's definitely a big service problem.
It's been a hard time where publishing companies have had to come to grips with the fact that they are not competing. Call of Duty is not competing against, Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. They're competing against, their main competitor is the free version of their own game.
Yeah.
So you have to make the experience of acquiring this game legally to be so hassle-free, so easy, and so rewarding that to get it illegally would actually seem like a detriment to the player. Because, and this is helped by the fact that humans are collectors. We like to collect things. We're fucking pack rats. All right? Before there were digital goods, people had libraries filled with books, even ones they'd only read once and never planned to read again because it was part of their collection. And if they didn't have that one by that author, they wouldn't have the full set. People had collections. You should see some of my friends' houses that are a little older than me. They just have walls of Nintendo games from their youth that they just have and they keep because it's impressive. It's like this piece of their childhood on the wall. And by the same token, you can show somebody your Steam library and go, look at this. See, I've got all these games here. And it just doesn't have the same feeling when you've got all these assorted folders with, reloaded at the end of them. It's just not the same.
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty funny, and Bridger, I don't know if you want to get into this later in terms of what certain game developers are doing to combat piracy, where they flood the torrents with broken versions of their game, like what the Serious Sam guys did.
Is that
they
literally
put
a
in
thing?
the Immortal Scorpion. And then the Batman Rocksteady guys, they put in a glitch where in the beginning of the game when you're starting, it was Batman, you need to do the cape thing in the tutorial. Well, what Batman does, they coded in a special animation where he'd like hold himself and then you just fly off the cliff and die. And you could never get past that part. And then one guy posted on their forums before release, who's like, this game is broken, Batman just dies every time. And he's like, congratulations, you've identified yourself as a pirate, banned. The game's not even out yet. It was so funny.
That's so great.
A lot of them.
The Immortal Scorpion that I posted on there, that was the Serious Sam 3 guys. What they did is, like I said, they flooded the torrents with cracked copies of the game, and they made it so you could not kill this Scorpion boss. It would just follow you. It had like speed hacks on and Immortal, and it was just you couldn't kill the damn thing. It's so funny.
You can play the game.
Yeah, you can play the game, but you're not going to get very far.
That's pretty great. I have to give him credit for that. That's clever.
All right, so I think Great found it.
Yeah, I posted it earlier too. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I just copied his link.
The other one that I like. Oh, there we go. He's playing. Uh-oh.
There it is.
It's not dying.
See? Oh, there it is. It just speeds in. Does it power slide?
Game is broken. And people just got that. They had to go on the forums and say, why isn't my game working? It's like, well, you bought a pirated copy, you jerk. So,
You bought a pirated copy?
yeah, you bought a pirated copy for free. So,
Speeding all over the place.
my favorite version of this, I don't know if you read this or not. I think I might have this in the show notes link somewhere, but there is a game. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's called Game Dev Tycoon, where you play a game studio, right? If you buy the game, you can play it normally, and part of the game is balancing, piracy rates versus how much DRM do you want to put in the game and trying to strike that balance. But they, too, flooded the torrents with a pirated copy of their own game that was tweaked just so you could never win the game because pirates would pirate your game too much. In the game mechanics, they tweaked it so that they would always drive you out of business by just pirating the hell out of your game. So, I mean...
That's actually really... That hits
very
close to
clever.
home. Yeah, that's
Boss, it seems that many players play our new game. They steal it by downloading a cracked version rather than buying it legally. If players don't buy the games they like, we will sooner or later go bankrupt, and then the button is just a sad face. So
I have to give them credit. That's really clever. Just on the Scorpion and the Batman thing. That's amazing that they realize it's a problem and they're not just gonna do silliness about it. Like they're trying to combat it.
Not only that,
screw with the people. Like only punish the people who are doing this, not everyone.
Yeah, this punishes the people who are doing it rather than the people who aren't doing it. And I think that's one of the biggest things with DRM is it really kind of hurts people who don't pirate.
how can the game tell that it's a pirate copy? Well, Big Chunk, that's the thing. They put the pirate copies out as if they were cracked, but the copies that the developers released were the broken version. But you can't know that just by downloading it. You have to play it to find out if you got the broken version or the real version. Obviously, the one that they sold to people, they sold them the real version, but they put the broken version out on the pirate websites. It's written into the game. Now, this is another thing. They allowed you to have a demo. They put no DRM on this game, and it's only $8. And then they uploaded a cracked version of their own game. The result was a 93.6% piracy rate. Damn. That is absurdly high. But, yeah, so that's another thing. A couple of these articles that I was reading talked about how a lot of these publishers equate pirated copies to losses. Like, so on their balance sheet, it says, revenue, we sold this much stuff, and then under losses, you have, well, we had to pay the employees, we had to pay their health care, we had to buy and license an engine, we had to do all this, and all of these copies got pirated. They put that under loss. And that doesn't make sense when you're talking about an infinite stock of a digital good. That accounting method, that is how you would calculate things, for example, if you ran a store, a retail store, and something fell off the shelf and broke, you would account that as a loss on your accounting sheet because it was a physical good that you can no longer sell. But a pirated copy, once you have infinite copies of something, you take one away, you still have infinity. So you can't have a loss of infinity. So from an accounting point of view, when they're crunching the numbers and saying we're losing X much money on piracy, you can't quantify that. And that's a major problem and a flaw in what a lot of the publishers are trying to claim. And they're trying to, put draconian DRM on their things and try to justify it by saying, look at our profit and losses sheets. See, this proves why we need... No, that proves you're bad at accounting. All right? That's just not how it works. You're just you're taking advantage of a loophole in the difference between physical and digital goods. By the same token, if somebody returns a good to a physical store and says, this is the wrong size, or this didn't work, or we didn't want this one, and you put it back on the shelf after, that's essentially you get to add one back to your inventory. But with the digital good, when you give a refund to somebody, you can't add 1 plus infinity is still infinity. It doesn't count as a loss either. It's a really weird thing. And check through the show notes if you want to read more about this. There's a couple of really good Gama Sutra articles about that. And it was blowing my mind. I was like, 1 minus infinity minus what? I'm trying to get it across to you as best as I can.
The limit as it approaches negative infinity? No.
Exactly. And it's
we're
really
getting the
confusing.
Stephen Hawking paradox here. Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
So thinking of piracy from that point of view is really weird too. But again, the number of people, how do you even come to the conclusion of if somebody pirated a game, if piracy wasn't an option, would they have bought it? Well, if they're pirating it because they don't have money, then the answer is probably no. If they're pirating it just because they have money but don't want to spend it, then that could have been a lost sale. It depends on what other things they have in their life. I mean, from my point of view, you have a certain amount of gaming money that you're going to spend per month on gaming, usually. And
all of it.
Everything I'm not spending on Doritos and Mountain Dew
is wasted.
So I think probably a lot of pirates is they spend all the money that they plan to spend on gaming and then realize I can't spend my grocery money to get the other thing that I want, but I do want all the things. So I'll pirate stuff in addition. So they buy the games they really like, but then they also pirate games when they can't afford them. I think that's probably your average pirate. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's hard to say. It really comes back to the whole... There have been so many companies arguing about piracy and why it happens. Like Crytek is a prime example. They used to be leaders in the PC industry in terms of PC-exclusive games with Crysis and whatnot. And they whined and they cried because piracy apparently took a big chunk out of their sales, or what they viewed their sales should have been. And I think that's more along the lines than they can actually argue, like Bridger was talking about, then they actually lost actual sales. It was more that they didn't hit what they expected to. But they complained a lot and they were very unhappy, and they said, well, fine, basically, screw you guys. We're going to go into the console market as well to try and recoup the losses from our lost PC exclusives. And I think that's one side of the bigger publishers' perspectives, that they get frustrated and then the quality of future titles is decreased, arguably. The consoles have a more limited graphical capability than PCs, at least currently they do. And so you have to consider that the game will be, in a sense, less than it would have been as a full-blown PC exclusive. So Crysis 2 was worse than Crysis 1, and that's true in a lot of senses more than not. Crysis 2 is crap. But that is part of game design as a whole, and it's a decision as a company. But I would agree that it really does come down to people being hesitant to spend $65 on a title that may not really interest them that much, or they are just unsure, or they just don't have the money for it. A lot of people don't, and that's why we're seeing more indie titles, more Kickstarter titles. We're seeing more sales on different digital venues, trying to compete with Steam, obviously. But I think that they are trying to... over the next probably 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of the market itself learning that it needs to cater more to the people, so they buy the product instead of pirating. And that's what it comes back to, the statistics. What was it in Norway, Bridger?
Yes.
And it comes back into statistics and lines of HBO as well. How if the venue is there for people to buy affordably, they will, over pirating and possibly getting a bugged, hacked, cracked, virus-ridden version of the game.
And I think having a whole... in addition to all that, you also have to have a quality product.
Absolutely, that it really comes down to that, and we have a lot of cookie-cutter games nowadays that are just trying to... I mean, look at the new Aliens versus Predator game, or the Aliens Colonial Marine game. Holy God! Oh my God, was that the biggest marketing fail and lie I've ever seen in my life. I cannot believe that... I mean, there's a lawsuit against Sega right now for that game. And rightfully so, in my opinion.
Not the final version, but I played that demo that they had, and the multiplayer demo, and I'm like, all right, this is not going to be terrible. And then it came out, I'm like, wow, this is really bad. Why is this so bad?
I can only hope people will learn their lesson and stop pre-ordering games.
Yeah.
At least not by developers which don't have a track record. Like, I don't blame people if they pre-order a game from Creative Assembly. I don't blame people if they pre-order a game from Valve or from Blizzard, because they have a track record. And you can look back and say, well, all of their games have at least been of high quality. Even if I didn't necessarily like them, you can't argue with the fact that they were polished. You know, they have a reputation. And I'd be willing to buy on reputation and trust. But buying blindly for a game or a new IP from a studio that you don't recognize or who has only done sort of B games before, that's just a recipe for disaster. And that will happen more as long as people keep pre-ordering that way. So the lesson is...
You mean pre-purchasing or pre-ordering? Because you have to be very specific with that. Because pre-ordering is more like putting a deposit or something down, saying like, I might buy this at launch, or like asking for a reserve copy. Where pre-purchase is buying the entire game before you even get it in your hands.
Yeah, I guess pre-purchasing would be the specific one there, but I always think that when people pre-order, they also pay the rest of it on launch day, sight unseen.
Yeah, on site when they get the game in their hands,
Right.
But pre-purchasing is a whole different beast in a lot of ways, because you're buying the game before it comes out.
True.
And that is a little slimy, but that's a different discussion. So
Indeed. So then I think let's talk about the tools that can actually help stop piracy. Like, so what tools do the game developers have at their disposal that can stop piracy, but without pissing off the consumer? Because, I mean, everybody knows Ubisoft just drove themselves into the ground with their fan base for a couple of years, where they just put worse and worse DRM on their games. And then EA had the whole SimCity fiasco. And people have sworn off EA and Ubisoft games as a result. I don't know how many people actually keep those promises. And that's why, you know, as an aside, I am super happy that I do not have to try and figure out why people buy games or don't buy games. Because there's so many reasons. And if you had to tell the boss, well, people aren't buying your game because it's shit. Like, no, it's much easier to say, oh man, they're just pirating, boss. It's totally it's not your fault. They're good games, you know? But I assume that's probably part of the reason we get such horrible DRM. But so what are the tools that developers can use? We talked about, you know, providing a better service. So, you know, like what Valve does. So if you make it easy to get your game, let's assume the game is easy to get. Are there any other ways that you can improve the piracy rate from a standpoint of the business?
How you handle your older games when the sort of original, I guess, like initial sales kind of taper down. So now we're not so much an issue, but I find games that are maybe 6 or 7 years old now that came out like I guess 04 or whatever, they're harder to get because back then we didn't have the same infrastructure we do now. So they're a lot harder to get. So kind of going back and looking at your library of games, this is mainly, I guess, for publishers, but if they go back and they kind of get their libraries up on Steam, or they get them up on Good Old Games or something like that, so that they're available to people, or even offered in their own in-house stuff. I know Ubisoft and EA have their own in-house sort of storefront, so they can do that. Like, make it easier to get the older games that people might want to pick up now and again. I think that's one way you can carve out a huge chunk of piracy right then and there.
Speaking of that, Microsoft, can I talk to you just for a second here? Just
go for it.
Rise of Nations is like the best game ever. Just put it on Steam. Sincerely, Bridger. Okay.
They will. They will.
There's been rumors, and they had, like, you know, indications, like in the Steam database, that Rise of Nations had been added. But of course, tons of games get added to there that never actually make it onto Steam. Those are games that are on consideration, and there are other things that have to come into play. I just keep hoping. That happened earlier this year. So maybe they're still working on it. Oh, man. Anyway. Or maybe, even better, they're working on like a Rise of Nations HD. I would buy like so many copies of that game.
For the Xbox One, though. So
no.
Yeah.
That's the
Xbox One exclusive.
Exactly.
But I think you're right. Showing people, and I think a perfect example would be, you know, if you're releasing a newer version of a game, like, you know, Assassin's Creed 3, and you want people to buy that instead of pirating, you could throw in Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 for pre-order customers, or maybe just Assassin's Creed 1 or something like that, just to say, you know, we've made all the major sales you're going to make off of the first game. It doesn't hurt us to give this away to people to encourage them to not pirate the new game.
Right. And I would really like to talk about two companies in particular that I feel really get the Gamer Award of the Millennium, or whatever you want to call it, Tripwire Interactive and CD Projekt Red. Those guys have been the bastions of PC gamers and gamers everywhere in general. These guys, Tripwire Interactive has made great titles like Killing Floor, Red Orchestra, and they know how to support their games. They release new maps all the time. They release new content for their games every few months. Killing Floor is like a 5 or 6 year old game, and they still do every season. They have a new event where it's a new map, new weapons, new skins and stuff. Skins, sure, you can buy them if you want to. You can pay real money, whatever. But, I mean, they're dedicated to going firmly against DRM. There's no DRM on either company's games, and there never will be. CD Projekt Red has been fantastic with the Witcher series, which is personally my favorite RPG series of all time. I thought The Witcher 2 was incredible, and the original Witcher, and I'm looking forward to the third one as well.
Should I go get another try? Because I rage quit that game after like 5 minutes.
Which game? The Witcher?
The Witcher 2. The interface drove me nuts.
Yeah, you need to give it another. It definitely deserves another chance. But back on the whole DRM subject, is they have basically said that what they want to do is they just want to make a great product that people enjoy, and they're always going to be creating content for the people who bought their game and who buy their game, giving people a constant reason to pick up the game or spread the word about it. And they've done it. They released the extended enhanced edition for The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2, where they updated graphics, fixed all the bugs, added quests. They keep adding things to their game for no charge at all. They're an incredible developer, and if every developer followed that mindset, I really don't believe we'd have a problem with piracy at all. If more, and I mean, these are small studios. That's what's freaking mind-boggling to me. These are small studios that don't have EA or Activision's budget, and they don't whine about piracy. They don't care. They do what they do for the love of the game and the love of the people who play the games. And they deserve all the respect in the world, and if you guys have never tried either of those companies' titles, I highly encourage them, because that kind of great development and customer service really should be rewarded by the communities. I really think that those games and those companies need to be mentioned a lot more when this argument comes up, because they are doing it right. They are doing it right where every other company seems to be getting it wrong.
Yeah, it is really impressive how those small studios can provide so much support for their games, but they have a loyal fan base, and that's the thing that keeps them alive. Because and that's one of the things I was going to bring up. If you can garner a loyal fan base, not only by releasing really good games, but talking to them like they're people, you know, not just putting out press releases, but like putting out news posts that look like they're written by the developers themselves. Not written poorly, but just not written by, like, marketing speak, right? Like, it sounds like coming from the heart, right? That's what's important.
Absolutely.
It has to sound like it's coming from the developers who love this game to the players who love to play this game. You know, and if you can convince your players that your developers are real people with real feelings and real, you know, lives, then that's going to guilt people into buying your game when they might otherwise pirate it. If they know who you are and they can put faces to your... Like, everybody knows who Chris Roberts is because they've been doing such a good job putting out videos of the developers and all these different things that, you know, you can't think about... Let's just pretend that Star Citizen was something that you could pirate, maybe the single-player game. People would have to think, you know, I'm robbing that guy.
Yeah.
You know, I know who that is. This is not a nameless, faceless corporation that you can just they've got plenty of money. You know the name of the guy. You probably know his kids based on how often he's posting and stuff, right? That's a huge tool in the arsenal of the developers and publishers to build that relationship because nobody wants to rip off their friends.
Yeah.
Okay, very few people want to rip off their friends.
That's really how you win it, though. I mean, in my opinion, Bridger and Gray, I think that's how the gaming community, the gaming developers and companies and publishers have to change. They have to become aware of this. The fact that they're with the economy as shit as it is, and with everyone guarding their wallet a little bit more closely and more willing to pirate something as opposed if they're not sure of the purchase. Well, I really think that if these companies start putting a human face on themselves and the developers get active with people and actually show that they care about the game that they're making and the people they're making it for, I really think you're going to see piracy start disappearing, or at least not becoming a very niche thing, as opposed to such a widespread phenomenon as it is now.
Also, it comes down not just to companies, but also us as consumers. Like, we
That's
have
true.
to use our money very wisely. So you have to buy the games that sort of like from the studios that you really agree with in a lot of ways. Even if you wouldn't necessarily try The Witcher or maybe another game that comes from a studio which you don't traditionally play, you have to give it maybe you say, these guys are kind of thinking the right way. I like the way they're thinking. I agree with them. Let me give them a shot. You know, that's how businesses kind of work. And then as much as you might hate it, don't buy the games that you don't agree with what's going on. For instance, From Dust, I was really excited for that game. I really wanted to get it. But the DRM thing that came up for From Dust totally threw me off, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. But I never bought that game, and I will never buy that game.
I heard a big kerfuffle about that, but I didn't get the details.
Yeah.
What exactly was it? You
Basically,
could only install it on a couple of computers or something?
No, the big thing was this was in Ubisoft. We had their big DRM like crusade, I'll say, where they were going after pirates so hard because they blamed like everything on pirates back then. And what happened was they posted that, oh, you would have to log in once or something with Dust for the DRM, and then it'd be whatever. You don't have to worry about it, and it doesn't need to always be online.
Equivalent to Steam's offline mode, right?
Yeah, something along those lines. But what happened when the game was released was that it actually required you to always be online. So they like legitimately lied about their DRM right out the gate, and that got people pissed. And Steam actually, I believe, gave refunds, and that's when you know it's bad, when Steam is refunding people.
Yeah.
And that turned into a huge disaster for Ubisoft, who they've now kind of come around and said, all right, you guys win, because we lost money, which is the one thing you have over these people, is money. We lost money on this game, and many others. We're not going to be as strict with DRM, and I think they're actually thinking of dropping it on a lot of their games.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
I think
very, very interesting.
Overall, though, piracy existing is a positive thing for the consumer because it keeps the publishers in check. If piracy didn't exist, then people would have to pay for stuff that they wanted to play, and then afterwards they wind up feeling bad about it. Like, they'd have no way around a really shitty publisher that makes a really amazing game.
Right.
Like, that is the nightmare scenario. That's what Battlefield 3 and 4 are. That's like, I really want these games. I really, really don't want to give EA any money. I want that more than anything else in the world, except to play Battlefield 4. It's the nightmare scenario.
I know I'm going to get it. I know I'm gonna get it.
And I'm not saying I'm not going to justify it. I'm not saying it's justified, but the fact that consumers are going out there and saying, "Oh, so you think it's fun to screw us out of money either by lying on your marketing material or making a shitty game and like Colonial Marines, embargoing all the reviews so that you trick people in, you can quote unquote punish companies much more easily. Like if you had to buy games in order to play them, people, and they do it now even, right? They say, we need to boycott so-and-so. I'm never buying another EA game again. And you know they're going to buy another EA game. 95% of that is crap. But a lot of that is, I'm not buying another EA game. I might pirate it because I can't help myself, but I'm certainly not paying them money. Like the fact that there's an alternative that you can use so you can say, listen, I like these guys. I want to support these guys because they support me. I pay for this. And you kind of have that choice. Like, you do it the right way, I reward you. You do it the wrong way, you get nothing. And I think that's a positive thing for both sides. It keeps the publishers and the developers honest because free-to-play games honestly make me lose all hope for humanity. But
the whales! They hunt for the whales. Did you read that?
I did.
Oh man,
it's incredibly,
it's so sad,
depressing.
And just, it's petty.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention in terms of what in the vein that we're on right now, look at Xbox One. Look what Microsoft tried to do.
Yeah.
And they had to change everything because the backlash, they basically already threw in the towel for the console war. PS4 won wholeheartedly, and then they were like, okay, we can't do any of that. And did you guys hear that they pulled the family sharing plan as well as kind of like, no, you guys can't have everything you want.
Their reasoning for that was like that was part of their whole like structure. And what's crazy about that is people want that service still. They don't want the DRM, but they want the cool service. And I think that is the key. Is like people don't want to have these draconian methods. They don't want to be like I can have to log onto my system at 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure I'm like logged in for the day or something silly like that. But they want the services. And so people were ready to make a choice there with their money and say, I'm going to go with PS4. Screw Xbox, I'm ready to spend my money. And Microsoft said, okay, damage control mode. Let's fix this. And they changed it very fast. Like literally, I think it was the first meeting that Monday after E3, they got back in the office. They're like, all right, guys, how are we changing this? How are we going to write this blog post about changing this
to be a fly on the wall. It like when the Microsoft people were watching Sony's press conference and just like, where's my blade? I must commit seppuku.
In Japan at Sony HQ, when they saw Microsoft's delayed, launch event thing, they must have been like, "Oh my God, we've won already!" Somehow, we haven't even started the war yet, but we already won.
Now, go ahead.
That really comes back to the consumers being able to control what the publishers release. I mean, this and what we get essentially. If people speak up loud enough, they're going to have to listen. And I mean, that thing with Microsoft was so huge. And I mean, at first they were like, "We're not changing it. This is how it's this is how we intend it to be. This is how it's developed." And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh my God, we're literally going to go bankrupt or whatever. We can't afford this huge hit." And they changed everything. It was beautiful. It was absolutely
now. Before we get too excited, I don't consider it a total victory because you have to read the fine print, and PS4 had this too. When PS4 announced that you'd be able to do whatever you wanted with your copies of the game, just like old times, they specifically said that was for disc-based media.
Ooh,
and we all know that discs and physical media are going out the door. This next generation could be the transition generation where people stop buying physical discs because they'll be easier and faster to just click download on their PS4 or Xbox One and get the game. And those will most certainly have DRM and restrictions and Steam-like services where you have to be online in order to play them or have to have been online in the last 24 hours. I mean, Microsoft and PS4 are both going to be doing something like that. So that is happening. they just managed to quell most people's disruption because you can still probably, for at least the next foreseeable future, and maybe for this entire generation, buy the disc games. They're just going to try to sort of slowly wean people off of the disc games onto the digital ones, and so quietly and easily that it's going to be like Steam, how it swept up on everybody, and then suddenly people are going, wow, we're using DRM? What?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, the blade slips under the armpit. Yep, and there we go.
I mean, Steam didn't get it right at first. Let's not forget that.
No, it was
They were
horrible.
Bad in the beginning.
Probably just as bad as Microsoft's marketing screw up was how bad Steam's coding was from day one.
But they didn't say like, "Oh, there it is. This is all you're getting." They said, "All right, there's something wrong here. Let's try to fix it." And they now have probably one of the best distribution platforms in the business right now, and one of the most successful.
Probably the best, yeah.
All right. So, any final thoughts here? Anything that we missed? Anything that we needed to go over? Chat room, did you have any questions about Piracy you think would be worth discussing before we close it up here? There is, like I said, a bunch of really interesting sources on this material that you can find in the show notes, which are located down at the bottom of the video here. If you're watching on YouTube, they're in the description. There's also the audio podcast feed where you can get the audio versions of all of these shows. I think that about wraps it up for me. What about you guys?
I think we've covered just about everything we possibly could.
Yep. Vote with your money. That's all I gotta say.
With your money. A fantastic point. Except the Steam sale happened and I am bone dry. What do you think of piracy games you can't obtain in your country? Twigs and Guns asks.
That's a good point. It's like goes to that service issue. Say be proud like you're pirating it if you are in that country, and then be vocal about it. Like, I have to buy this game or I have to pirate this game because you don't have it in my country. Why are you not releasing this here? Why isn't it localized for my language? Why is it not up to par with like the other versions? Demand these things.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that at the beginning as like the only legitimate, justifiable reason to pirate something is it's not available either because it's not available in your country or because a game is abandonware, and you can't buy it anywhere normally. But homeworld games are coming back. Don't forget that. That was the news last week. Homeworld games
Gearbox, right,
are
that
coming
bought that?
back.
I believe it was Gearbox.
Sega, I thought?
No, it was Gearbox.
Oh, it was a Gearbox, huh?
Yeah, Sega doesn't have it. So
I believe they got it.
it's going to be Gearbox, I believe.
Sega
got Company of Heroes, and they got Relic, but Relic they don't have the Warhammer.
Yeah,
like,
Gearbox
they still have
announces
40K,
the
yeah.
remakes.
They don't have Fantasy. Creative Assembly has Fantasy.
That's right.
Warhammer Fantasy, which is interesting because that means Total War, probably Warhammer.
Yeah.
Just I love Warhammer Fantasy, and yeah.
No, you're right. It's Gearbox.
Yeah.
What has Gearbox
Homeworld.
done? That sounds super familiar.
Borderlands.
Alien
Alien Colonial Marines.
They did that?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, everything I said about track record
sad.
before.
Duke Nukem Forever.
Throw it out the window and just yeah.
Well, see, this is what Gearbox does. Is like Borderlands is a good series that they've done. They've done really well, and I guess that's sort of their main studio. And they picked up Duke Nukem Forever, I believe, and Colonial Marines. So like they just pick up these games that kind of are dying, throw money at them, and like sort of outsourcing studios apparently, and they just release them. That's kind of, I don't know. Like you decide where you stand on that. I don't personally like it. And
Sad day.
Yeah.
All right. I think that about covers it then. Certainly there's plenty of other things to talk about. If you have any ideas of future topics to talk about on the General Gaming Show, go ahead and leave them in the comments here on the YouTube channel or send me a message on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Bridger15 is how you can get a hold of me. Also subscribe, for the love of God. I don't have enough. I don't care. If you like the content, you subscribe. That's all there is to it. This isn't a plea. It's just a friendly reminder. Click the button that has the heart on it. So, thanks guys for watching. Remember, this Wednesday I'll be streaming if you're interested in watching Kingdoms of Amalur. It's actually a really fun game, and if you want to find out what it's like, check it out. And if you want to watch me play some more Civ 5, I'm sure I'll be doing that later on in the week. This weekend I'm going to be gone, But next Sunday, another general gaming show. What's the topic?
Oh.
I don't know. We'll find out. I'm sure it's going to be good. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Have a good night.
See you guys.
See you later.
They had
I'm not
Fluttershy
listening.
talking and Pinkie Pie talking that she was like gonna kill you and eat you. It was like terrifying. And I had nightmares. I showed that shit to Sam and he was like, "That's not scary." I was like, "No, you don't understand."
All right, guys.
All right, guys.
Pinkie
It was
Pie
fun.
is freaky.
Yep.
I
Good
know you
show
got to
as
go,
usual.
Rogers. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. Catch you later.
We'll have to get
See
you
you
on again
whenever.
sometime.
Bridge, are we going to do something for Rome? Like, do you want to
Oh,
do...
dude, we got to.
I'll
We
be
have to
off
do,
that
like, a
entire week,
dual
so I'll
stream.
probably be playing the
God
shit out
damn
of
it, you fucker.
Excellent.
I wanted to be
I'm
off.
taking 3 weeks off.
I
Oh,
asked, I
man.
wanted to go, but I found out that's like a huge show at work. I literally can't take that off without
You should
fucking
just call
over
in sick.
everyone.
I'll stream. I'll stream for you. I'll get my stream
listen,
work
if
in
I
again.
hated my coworkers, I would totally call in sick, but they're not bad people. So I can't in good conscience call in sick. I am going to get out early on the launch day though, so I can start streaming at like 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
But we definitely have to do something great. Like you and I just have to be like
We
playing
can do like a
and
co-op
streaming.
campaign.
Can you do a
could, like-
co-op campaign?
Yeah, you can do a co-op campaign where you two share or like automatically allied and you have trade rates and everything. And this is how it worked in Shogun, so I assume it's going to work the same way.
That's awesome.
And you have like objectives. You share the same victory condition.
Oh man,
So,
we
like-
got to do that.
So you could have like Rome, Carthage, destruction, empire of friendship, which would just dominate the whole classic
Rome
world.
and
Like,
Carthage together.
yeah.
All right. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. Might be on to stream something later tonight. I got to find out what's on the docket. Don't know if we're going to be playing some Orcs Must Die 2. Going to be playing that with the wife at some point probably. She expressed an interest. That's actually looks like a ton of fun. It's got what the first game lacked, which is co-op. And then another alternative probably could be playing some League or... actually, those are probably the only 2 games that we're going to be streaming later, so if you're interested in any of those, stick around. Orcs Must Die 2 is a game on Steam you can look up. It's like a...
I bought it for like $3 on the.
Yeah, it's like a
sale.
third-
It's like tower defense, right?
third-person tower defense,
Tower
though. So
defense,
you're
yeah.
setting up the towers, and then you're also fighting off the orcs yourself. And you can upgrade as you like progress through the levels. You can get new types of traps and new types of weapons and abilities for your character. It's pretty cool. It's a lot like Sanctum, but with a cartoony look to it instead. And the physics are great when you make the orcs explode backwards in this big ball of orcs. It's very entertaining to watch. Very well done animations and stuff. Anyway, I'll be out for now. I might be back on in a like 15, 20, half hour. We'll see. Thanks guys for watching. Have a good one.
See you guys.
Peace.
All right,
And
I
you
gotta
can-
go, guys. So
See you later. Nice.
yeah,
podcast.
nice to